WPEG.net television network is your PEG content provider in Wisconsin's North Woods. Public, education, and government programming content is what we do. From city meetings to school board meetings and all points in between, you can count on WPEG.net to deliver the news of your elected officials to you. With WPEG's television network working for your community, you don't have to miss another government meeting or an important school board presentation. We deliver directly to your living room and computer. Tell your city officials that you want to know what they're doing. After all, that's why you elected them. Let your elected officials know that you want WPEG.net television network on your community cable television system today. Call 715-490-2300 or 490-2303 and tell us what you think. Or you can send us an email at pegnews@wpeg.net.
Yeah, we're back. Here we go. It's we were in the middle of listening to Know the Truth step-by-step from Fox News. Brett Baer gave a report a little bit, and for those of you who didn't catch it, yeah, that's exactly right. It's kind of a breakdown of the events as at least the liberal press is telling us went down. I'll be hanging in the background listening, and we'll jump in if and when we need to.
The story shifts to Washington. Here's Chief White House correspondent Ed Henry.
Since our founding, the United States has been a nation that respects all faiths. We reject all efforts to denigrate the religious beliefs of others.
September 12th, in the Rose Garden, President Obama seems to embrace an idea he and his top aides will advance more explicitly over the next 2 weeks. That Ambassador Chris Stevens and 3 other Americans were killed in a spontaneous riot over an anti-Mohammed internet video and not a planned attack. He does use the term terror, but only in a general sense, in the context of the September 11, 2001 al-Qaeda attacks.
No acts of terror will ever shake the resolve of this great nation, alter that character, or eclipse the light of the values that we stand for.
He gives an interview to CBS's 60 Minutes shortly thereafter. He says nothing that has happened has made him second-guess his policies in the Middle East since the Arab Spring.
I was pretty certain and continue to be pretty certain that there are going to be bumps in the road.
Because Nevada is a battleground state.
That afternoon, the president leaves for a campaign trip to Las Vegas.
The President of the United States did not postpone a campaign event, even though we had been hit.
I said at the time, I thought that was the biggest political strategic mistake of the Obama campaign.
Dana Perino was the White House press secretary in George W. Bush's administration. She's now a Fox News host.
Just imagine if he would have said, as commander-in-chief, it is important for me to stay back here at the White House. Just imagine, everybody would have thought, wow, how responsible.
Once the president had made his statement, I'm not sure what he should have done.
Democrat Eleanor Holmes Norton represents the District of Columbia.
Are we supposed to sit in mourning for several days and not go about our daily business?
September 13th, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton suggests the attack was just a spontaneous demonstration about the anti-Islam video.
There is no justification, none at all, for responding to this video with violence.
Current White House Press Secretary Jay Carney says so flat out the next day.
These protests were in reaction to a video. We have no information to suggest that it was a pre-planned attack.
And later that day, when the President and Secretary of State greet the deceased at Joint Base Andrews, Clinton talks again about the video.
We've seen rage and violence directed at American embassies over an awful internet video that we had nothing to do with.
September 15th, California authorities haul Nakula Basili Nakula, the man who produced that video, in for questioning and marched him in front of TV cameras.
Do you have any regrets?
September 16th, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Susan Rice goes on 5 Sunday talk shows, repeating the same story each time.
What happened initially was it was a spontaneous reaction to what had just transpired in Cairo as a consequence of the video.
My reaction was, where's Secretary of State Hillary Clinton?
To John Bolton, who served as UN ambassador under George W. Bush, the choice of Rice is telling.
From my own experience, when you're a senior American official, you don't go on the Sunday talk shows unless you're White House choice. So that That to me is an indication that there were already internal difficulties within the administration, and that perhaps Secretary Clinton wasn't seen by the White House as the best spokesperson for what the administration wanted to say.
September 17th, the State Department.
Does the United States government regard what happened in Benghazi as an act of terror?
Again, I'm not going to put labels on this until we have a complete investigation, okay?
So you don't regard it as an act of terrorism?
I don't think we know enough.
From my experience,
former Obama State Department spokesman P.J. Crowley.
First reports inevitably have information that is correct and information that may be misunderstood or incorrect.
They panicked.
Former White House Chief of Staff John Sununu is now a senior advisor to Republican Mitt Romney's campaign.
This is purely a political reaction in a White House that had prepared itself to establish a narrative of a president getting rid of the threat of terrorism, using the death of bin Laden to focus on that, and waking up one morning and finding out that terrorism on 9/11 of this year was back full-fledged and even killing a U.S. ambassador.
I don't see a political agenda here. I see the fog of war. It's not about politics. It's about the difficult task of reconstructing what happened.
September 18th.
Did the administration have any...
Somebody who lives here, sort of a shadowy character. This caused great offense in much of the Muslim world. But what also happened was extremists and terrorists used this as an excuse to attack a variety of our embassies, including the consulate in Libya.
September 19th, Capitol Hill. The head of the National Counterterrorism Center testifies and plainly states what most everyone already knows.
I would say yes. They were killed in the course of a terrorist attack on our embassy.
September 24th, ABC's The View.
There's no doubt that the kind of weapons that were used, the ongoing assault, that it wasn't just a mob action.
The next day, September 25th, the president mentions the video 6 times at the United Nations.
There's no video that justifies an attack on an embassy.
October 8th, at a San Francisco fundraiser, President Obama pushes the idea the threat from al-Qaeda is waning.
And today, al-Qaeda's on its heels, and Osama bin Laden is no more.
Then, the next day, October 9th, the State Department provides off-camera a blow-by-blow account of the Benghazi attack. Reporters learned the compound was overwhelmed by an organized assault. Fighters armed with machine guns, mortars, and possibly rocket-propelled grenades. October 10th, Congress holds a contentious hearing on the attack in Libya. And Americans learn that State Department officials, despite being warned of escalating attacks, refused to beef up security in Libya. The shocking revelations made the first question in the next night's vice presidential debate all but inevitable.
I would like to begin with Libya.
And turned questions about what really happened in Benghazi into one of the most heated issues of the presidential campaign.
Beyond the controversy over who said what are bigger issues. Next, Special Report investigates what Benghazi reveals about President Obama's foreign policy.
Yeah, there you have it. It unravels one bit by day. And yet, though it hit the vice presidential debate, it did not culminate with any kind of seriousness by the GOP candidate against an administration that had failed miserably. Inclusive of now, it appears that Hillary Clinton will be retiring at end of term. And this truly is an American issue that has yet to be discussed within the leadership roles that are begging once again for our votes as American citizens. And I'm sorry, this comes to both sides of the aisle. You want to be a leader, be a leader. Don't be a wuss. Don't be a girlyman. It's absolutely ludicrous that this has not been discussed seriously. And I don't want to hear, there's no way when you have loss of life on an American piece of property on foreign soil and you have a government that is inept or unable to protect our citizens, that's an act of war. And I'll guarantee you that this video has probably happened before the general and admiral have been retired. We'll leave no one behind in a hurricane. Well, the hurricane's over, so now we can come in and play hero. Now, when you got to put boots on the ground when you're under attack, that's when you need to be a hero, son. You need to send in the boys that know how to do what they know how to do, and they do it very well.
Is it smart diplomacy or geopolitical correctness? Fox's chief intelligence correspondent Catherine Herridge asks, if you're reluctant to call terrorism by its name, can you ever defeat the terrorists?
We have no information to suggest that it was a pre-planned attack.
We've seen rage and violence directed at American embassies over an awful internet video.
It was a spontaneous reaction to what had just transpired in Cairo.
Does the Obama administration have a problem calling the threat by its name?
There's no question that they have avoided the use of the word terror.
Former Congressman Porter Goss was head of the CIA under President George W. Bush.
We can't ignore criminal acts. We can't ignore terrorist acts.
Goss says the risk of ignoring terrorism is especially high in a part of the world awash in lethal weapons, and Libya was just such a part of that world. Case in point, a mysterious Libyan ship picked up in Turkey on September 6th. Just 5 days before Ambassador Chris Stevens, Information Management Officer Sean Smith, and former Navy SEALs Tyrone Woods and Glenn Doherty were killed during the extended terrorist assault in Benghazi. According to an initial September 14th report by the Times of London, 400 tons of cargo was on board, some of it humanitarian, and it was reportedly also holding a large consignment of weapons headed for Syria's rebels. The ship and its cargo are a huge warning sign that the situation on the ground in Libya is vastly more dangerous than even the State Department may have realized. Even before the well-organized massive attack in Benghazi that killed an ambassador who knew well the threat from al-Qaeda in the region was large and growing.
What do you think al-Qaeda looks like today, especially in North Africa?
It's much stronger. It's spreading out.
So there's no question in your mind that al-Qaeda is stronger in North Africa today than it was 4 years ago?
Oh, absolutely. We've got all kinds of new franchise operations.
The Benghazi attack and the administration's reaction to it suggests to Goss that this White House doesn't get it.
The problem is they're avoiding reality, and bad things happen when you avoid reality, and unfortunately we've just seen that.
We are in a stronger position today than we were 4 years ago.
P.J. Crowley, former United States Assistant Secretary of State for Public Affairs under President Obama, believes the president's anti-terror policies are paying off, particularly in places like Libya.
We've gone through a dramatic transition, called the Arab Spring. These transitions to democracy are a repudiation of everything that bin Laden stood for and tried to achieve, through violent means.
Crowley says you don't make Americans safer with words that inflame. You do it by winning over those we can work with.
We're at the stage where we need partnerships to solve any meaningful crisis around the world. The United States can never do that alone.
Do you believe that there are a lot of dead Americans as a result of this administration's refusal to call the threat what it is?
I do. Show signs of weakness. They take that as an opportunity and they will attack.
What did the president say, and when did he say it? That question is one of the most explosive in the presidential campaign. Could the election turn on the answer? After the break. The Benghazi terror attack, the White House response, the November election. Democrats accuse Republicans of gotcha politics. Republicans say this is an issue that cuts to the heart of the election. This much is certainly true. It's an issue that is not going away soon. By October, the Republican presidential nominee Mitt Romney is regularly hitting President Obama hard on Libya.
The attack on our consulate can't be blamed on a reprehensible video insulting Islam, despite the administration's attempts to convince us of that for so long.
But Obama Deputy Campaign Manager Stephanie Cutter insists the only reason it's a political issue at all is because Romney and Ryan are making it one. October 11th, right before the vice presidential debate, I asked her if she really meant that.
What are you suggesting here? Are you suggesting that we're playing politics with this?
I'm not suggesting anything. You said that
you have to
the
concede.
entire reason this has become the political topic.
Right.
4 people are dead.
Absolutely. And this administration, let me just get my sentence out. This administration has treated this entire tragedy with the utmost seriousness. Now, at the same time that we're doing that, we have 2 people campaigning around the country accusing us of covering something up. But in the vice presidential debate itself, moderator Martha Raddatz makes Libya her first question.
Wasn't this a massive intelligence failure, Vice President Biden?
What it was a tragedy, Martha. We will get to the bottom of it because whatever mistakes are made will not be made again.
Congressman Ryan.
What we are watching on our TV screens is the unraveling of the Obama foreign policy.
And they wanted more security there.
Well, we weren't told they wanted more security again. We did not know they wanted more security again.
Biden not only places the blame squarely on the State Department and the intelligence community, he also seems to flatly contradict what State Department officials have said under oath. That sends the administration backpedaling the next day, October 12th.
What the vice president said was that
we weren't told they wanted more security there, is what he said. That's a quote.
And he is talking about...
Never briefed. That's clear. He was never briefed that more security was needed.
There was...
Clearly, the White House is going to need a bus with, huge Traxxaurus-sized wheels for every element of the government that they're throwing under there.
Conservative author and commentator Mark Stein has written about Islamic terrorism for years.
They got the intelligence community under there. I mean, they've got the State Department under there.
Hi, Ambassador. Can you speak with us briefly about the attack in Benghazi?
This is not an appropriate time, but thanks for your interest.
But Rice's boss will crawl under that bus herself. On October 15th, Monday, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton says she takes responsibility for what happened in Benghazi.
I want to do everything I can to protect our people, and I also want to make sure that we track down whoever did this and bring them to justice.
Clinton's mea culpa comes a day before the second presidential debate, where the president, for the first time, takes responsibility too, then goes after Romney.
The day after the attack, Governor, I stood in the Rose Garden, and I told the American people that this was an act of terror, and the suggestion that anybody in my team would play politics or mislead when we've lost for our own governor is offensive.
That set off an exchange that may go down as one of the most remarkable in the history of televised presidential debates.
You said in the Rose Garden, the day after the attack, it was an act of terror. It was not a spontaneous demonstration. Is that what you're saying?
Please proceed, Governor.
I want to make sure we get that for the record, because it took the president 14 days before he called the attack in Benghazi an act of terror.
Get the transcript.
He did, in fact, sir. So let me call it an act of terror.
Can you say that a little louder, Candy?
He did call it an act of terror.
Only after the debate does Crowley admit that maybe she was the one with her facts wrong. Syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer was part of Fox's debate coverage that night.
The next day she walked away from it, whereas her intervention on behalf of Obama was in front of 60, 70 million people who will remember that and not know anything about her walking away.
Then Thursday, October 18th, a report claims Secretary of State Clinton ordered security in Libya beefed up, a request that was never carried out. And just today, official State Department cables showing Ambassador Stevens was increasingly worried about al-Qaeda security threats in the weeks leading up to the Benghazi attack, and even cables signed by Stevens on September 11th, the day he was killed. More reasons for America to ask, who is ultimately responsible for leaving those Americans so vulnerable?
If it's the White House, this will be devastating.
But Mark Stein hopes the political post-mortem doesn't obscure the more frightening fact that terrorism may
back with a vengeance, and America is woefully unprepared.
But you know what's wicked about this, Brett, is that the real politicization here is guys who actually only see this in terms of, will it hurt us in Ohio? Might it cause problems in Florida? This could go bad for Obama. Nuts to that. It's real bad for the United States because this is a humiliation for the United States. It's bad for Chris Stevens. It's bad for Sean Smith. It's bad for Glenn Doherty. It's bad for Tyrone Woods. They're dead. They're gone.
That's another reason I think here. Just to give a voice to those who don't have a voice anymore.
Which brings us back to Lieutenant Colonel Andrew Wood, who saw the deadly debacle at Benghazi coming.
I can tell you're a little emotional about it. This is a bastard who was killed, first one since 1979, and he's your friend.
I mean, it's a huge thing to have a loss like that. I grieve for his loss. I grieve for the loss that we suffer as a nation. It was our job to defend the compound.
Okay, man.
I wish we could have been there.
The Benghazi attack staggered America. We now have another reason to mourn on 9/11 and a new unmistakable warning. The Islamic terrorists who brutalized our citizens in Libya were well-trained, well-armed killers intent on doing us great harm. Brave, beleaguered Americans in Libya knew that long before they died. The rest of us owe it to them to understand that too. That's our program. I'm Brett Baer. Thanks for watching.
Well, there you have that. That was an enlightening encounter. While it may hold a fair amount of truth, it for sure should raise the hair on the back of every American's neck. As the colonel said, this was an attack on America. This was an attack on the American way of life. This was not an administration. If the administration, well, I won't say if, they did. They screwed it up. And they're the ones that are going to have to live with that on their heart, that mark on their heart till the day they die. Some people will just slough it off. But I truly do believe that there are some remorseful people in this administration because of their lack of ability to see the job through, to understand and forcibly demand that this not have happened. I don't know what else I can say. Hopefully the polls today on Election Day will reflect that very sentiment throughout America. Benghazi is not a name that we all knew before this all happened. But it sure is one that needs to stay in the forefront of when you're voting for an administration. And it's not just a president. It's for an administration. Our elected officials, congressmen, women, senators, and, of course, the White House staff. You need to understand that there are those who have political agendas and will never fully understand the gravity of their lack of actions in saving or not saving our diplomats abroad. There has to be severe ramifications, and I hope step one is in the polls today. And with that, it's about 1 o'clock, a little after 1 o'clock in the Midwest here, upper Midwest, near the almost up to the Canadian border at the bunker. And with that, I'm going to sign off for a couple hours, and I'll jump back on later on in the day once the election results, the polls start to come in. My pellet stove is cooking up a storm here tonight, trying to keep us warm here. I'm going to jump over. I may even DJ for a little while, throw some music out there, and try and ease through the afternoon until the heated part of the polling. I'm sure more and more items will, incidences, encounters will crop up throughout America. I haven't heard that much. I did hear a little first report about down in Arizona, and I don't know how true that is. There's still something going on down there or not. But with that, you got Just Jim in the morning and now the afternoon, the Just Jim Show on WPEG.net, your Dose of Reality Network. With that, we'll close with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll be back on later. Hang tough, get your butts out there, do your duties, and vote.
Getting back to school, I remember a teacher that I had. Now, I went to the 7th grade. I went to the 7th grade. I left home when I was 10 years old because I was hungry. And I used to, this is true. I work in the summer and I go to school in the winter. But I had this one teacher. He was the principal of the Harrison School in Vincennes, Indiana. To me, this was the greatest teacher, a real sage of my time, anyhow. He had such wisdom. And we're all reciting the Pledge of Allegiance one day. And he walked over, this little old teacher. Mr. Laswell was his name. Mr. Laswell. And he says, I've been listening to you boys and girls recite the Pledge of Allegiance all semester. And it seems as though it's becoming monotonous to you. If I may I recite it and try to explain to you the meaning of each word. I, me, an individual, a committee of one, pledge. Dedicate all of my worldly goods to give without self-pity. Allegiance, my love and my devotion to the flag, our standard, Old Glory, a symbol of freedom. Wherever she waves, there's respect, because your loyalty has given her a dignity that shouts freedom is everybody's job. United. That means that we have all come together. States, individual communities that have united into 48 great states. 48 individual communities with pride and dignity and purpose. All divided with imaginary boundaries, yet united to a common purpose. And that's love for country. And to the Republic, a state in which sovereign power is invested in representatives chosen by the people to govern. And government is the people. And it's from the people to the leaders, not from the leaders to the people, for which it stands. One nation, meaning so blessed by God, indivisible, incapable of being divided, with liberty, which is freedom, the right of power to live one's own life without threats, fear, or some sort of retaliation. And justice, the principle or qualities of dealing fairly with others. For all, which means, boys and girls, it's as much your country as it is mine. And now, boys and girls, let me hear you recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Since I was a small boy, 2 states have been added to our country, and 2 words have been added to the Pledge of Allegiance: under God. Wouldn't it be a pity if someone said that is a prayer and that would be eliminated from schools too?